I guess I would say that our basic premise here at this firm in terms of investing is that we're still at the beginning of a lot of these transformations. So I think we believe that a lot of the ways certain industries are structured, whether it's finance or book publishing or education, are all going to change still fairly radically over the next, call it, couple of decades. And the reason we believe that is true is because we simply didn't have this kind of technology around when the structures of these industries were created. I had a very fun conversation with our 9-year-old daughter the other day, where she said, so, Daddy, when you were my age, what did you do on the internet? Which sites did you go to? And I had to explain to her that it simply didn't exist, and it was completely incomprehensible to her. I mean, it was just, but if you think about how, universities are structured, or how education is delivered, a lot of it is completely premised on the idea that there's no such technology. You have to be in the same room as the teacher at the same time. You have to go to the library to get the book. There's only one place where you can get the book. If the book is checked out, you're tough out of luck. And all of these things are baked into how we do things in many different industries. And those things are all going to change. They take a long, long time to change. A lot of the investing mistakes that we made during the first internet bubble was that we all got so incredibly excited we thought this was going to change overnight, not realizing that these structures, whether it's universities, they all have a lot of momentum, and so they maintain themselves for a very long period of time, and the change only starts to take place on the outside and then slowly moves in. But once it moves in, then whole industries are not going to be the same.
I have a question. So let's say I need to do a project, create a project, and eventually then launch it as a serialization via DailyLit. I have to identify the subject matter and then create a serialization around it. Any advice as to the kinds of things I should think about in identifying a project or pursuing it?
Well, I think the general advice that I think we're giving to anybody who is doing anything entrepreneurial or creative is to figure out what their passion is, and to research, to do things that are of interest. Just tying that back to what I was just saying about education, one of the great things about today is that if you want to learn something about pretty much any subject under the sun, the content is already out there, and if you just want to teach yourself, whether it's HTML or anything else, it's already there. So it's putting a real premium on having an actual interest in something, because that's the source of motivation to go find the information. The information is already there, but if you're not motivated to find it, you're probably not going to have fun doing it. So I think going forward, one of the most critical things is to understand what it is that you are excited about personally.
Questions for Albert?
And I'm happy to answer any questions also, technical questions or questions about the internet or the future in general.
This is a great opportunity because Albert's seen a lot and met a lot of people, so.
I don't know if you touched on just the basic functionality of Google. I don't know how much you
well,
know
everybody
about
is good at using
indexing.
Google, but I always maybe. Who knows how Google actually finds stuff on the internet? So Google and all the other search engines run something called crawlers, which are large farms of computers that essentially read the internet. So they go out and they find a web page, and then they find every link on that web page, and then they go down that link and they request the next page, and they analyze the content of the page, the structure of the page, and again they find links and they keep going further, and they use that to come up with the idea of which pages are the most relevant pages on a given subject. Mostly by saying which other sites that also seem to be talking about the same thing point at these pages. One of the important things to understand is that any link that you share, who's using Gmail? So if you send a link on Gmail, Google will actually go and crawl that link. And so you should never send a link on Gmail to something that you don't want to potentially appear in the Google index. Or you should tell the owner of the site, if you're emailing things back and forth, to protect that site. So there are two ways to stop a crawler. One is every website has a file called robots.txt. You can actually go and request that file. You can go to any website and you type /robots.txt, and it'll retrieve a file, and that file will tell you what the site wants and doesn't want crawled. And the other way you can of course prevent a crawler is by password protecting something. So if a site is password protected, the crawler is going to get shut out because they don't generally know the password, and they try not to guess them either. So, but people sometimes don't think about that, and they'll send things around, and then they'll subsequently be very surprised when they find that those things have gotten indexed and are now on Google and searchable.
So this is why, when you search for a lot of different things, Wikipedia is the #1 search result, because so many links point back to Google. And also
Point back to Wikipedia.
Yeah, sorry, point back to Wikipedia. And it's
So Google has something called PageRank, and if you download the Google toolbar, you can actually see the PageRank for each page. And the higher the PageRank, the more authoritative Google thinks that page is on a given subject.
So how do you, if you're starting a blog and you're interested in the subject, just pick your subject matter, and when you want to start sort of engaging in that community, how do you make your website the ones that sort of...
Well, so there's a fun little sentence about blogging, which is the #1 rule of blogging is showing up. And by that, it means that if you want to build an audience online, and if you want Google to index you, you have to post on a subject on a fairly regular basis. Otherwise, people are not going to come to you. Now, people could get your information via something called RSS. Who knows what RSS is? This audience knows everything. But it turns out that, unless, again,
what do you explain? Because there are certain ones people didn't...
So RSS is a protocol that lets sites syndicate their content out. So instead of you having to go to the site, you can use Google Reader. Who uses Google Reader? You should all try it out. So Google Reader essentially lets you take RSS feeds, and then every time a new item has been posted, it'll show up in Google Reader, or in whatever RSS reader you're using.
So it's sort of like an inbox for the web. Rather than you're going out to different sites, it comes into your reader.
And it's one of the formats, one of the ways that DailyLit supports reading of books. But the thing is that if you want to blog and you want to establish some authority on a topic, it's good to blog on a regular basis, even if it's once a week. But so setting a pace for oneself that one can keep up is a very useful thing if one's blogging.
And you blog every day?
Every weekday, yeah.
Too much.
But I think people sort of say, well, what's the good of that? We firmly believe that going forward, nobody's going to really care about what grade somebody had in school. It's more about what is their visible trace of work, what's their visible output. And so having a way of documenting your output is to be a very good thing.
Somebody was asking the question of whether they should have a distinct blog for a particular area, or whether it should be sort of integrated into a personal blog, or what's your feeling about?
I think that's a completely, a lot of that depends on how integrated what you do is. Some people have a very distinct interests, and it's actually better if you have some very distinct interests. It's better to keep those separate. It'll make it easier for Google to figure out what your blog is about.